You're listening to the Hella Well with Danielle show, a podcast taking women of color on a journey exploring all things wellness and travel related. We're all about showing you how to put on your oxygen mask first and creating lasting self-care habits that will free you to travel the world and live the life you truly desire, and not one you have to fake loving. I'm your host, Danielle Washington. Now let's buckle up and start this journey. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Hella Well with Danielle podcast. I am your host, Danielle Washington, and I'm over being bougie is a bad thing. I've been called bougie for most of my life, and I used to think of it like, oh my God, don't call me bougie. How dare you say I'm bougie? And then I met Cassandra Alexis, the CEO of Opulent Outcomes coaching program, as well as the host of the Crowned Opulent podcast. And she schooled me on the facts of why we want to be bougie, why being bougie should be goals. And, when you talk about being opulent, and I love her way she talks about it, she wants women of color, especially Black women, to silence the doubt that they have and live an opulent life. And opulent to her doesn't mean living this life of luxury. It's aspiring for something better. And that's why being bougie is important. But she goes further into this. We talk about Christianity and how, there's this whole stigmatism about being rich. And so get ready for an amazing conversation that for me was inspiring and why I no longer worry about people calling me bougie. Yes, I'm Black, I'm bougie, and I'm okay with it. And here's why you should be too. Hello, Cassandra. Welcome to the Hella Well with Danielle podcast. How are you today?
Hey, Danielle. I am good, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing fabulous. You're looking awfully opulent today.
Well, thank you. I tried.
I wanted to have this conversation because, first of all, I'm tired of people calling me bougie. First thing.
Listen, I started to accept it and embrace it. And my best friend last year made me a t-shirt that says, unapologetically bougie.
And I love that. And that's why when you were talking, we were having a pre-conversation, and you were talking about, being bougie and that it's a good thing. And I'm like, oh my God, it is a good thing. So I just want you to start off with, why do you feel like being bougie is a good thing?
So first, let's go back a bit. Bougie, the term, comes from a French word. Now, excuse me if I don't pronounce it correctly. I don't speak French.
Bourgeoisie.
But the French term,
Bourgeoisie.
So the French, yes, there you go. Thank you, ma'am. Your French is much better than mine. It means aspiring to a higher class, the upper class. Who doesn't want to do that? Like, who is at one level and doesn't want to be more? Even if you are poor, if you are lower middle class, if you are in poverty, if you're middle class, everybody wants to be higher. Like, no one wants to struggle to pay their bills, to have to choose between, do I do this or do I do that? Can I have this or can I not? Like, who wants that lifestyle? Nobody. Yeah. So to me, it's like, well, why doesn't everybody want to be bougie?
Yeah. And it's funny because in doing this research, because of course, back in the day, was it the Very Smart Brothers? I forgot what they're called. I think that's what they're called. They had this thing, they had a whole series on shit bougie Black people do or whatever. And it's like, they like tap water, like they like, not warm tap water, but they like water they don't like tap water. They like water that is room temperature, or you like Thai food, or all these different things. But like in doing my research about this topic, I was like, yo, I learned, granted I knew some of this stuff already, but like I learned so much more. Like, okay, the word bourgeoisie, actually, if you really look up the term, besides just being aspiring to want, nicer things, it actually literally means in French, the people who lived in the walled part of the city. Like back in the day when you had the peasants and the farmers, you had the people who lived in the castles, and then you had the people who lived in the town city, which equated to quote unquote middle class. And I'm like, okay, got this. And then you have, Marxism, which I was a poli-sci major. I knew about Marx. I'm like, yeah. Marx, the poor against the middle class. The middle class are the ones who are ruining everything. Got you. I don't understand them, but I understood what he meant. And then you have what's interesting is, I don't know if you know about the Wobblies. Do you know about them?
I'm not familiar with that. No, what's that?
So these are some people, and don't get me wrong, I really don't understand them either. They were part of the industrial workers of the world. And they took the word bourgeoisie from Karl Marx and took it on to change it. And then they, couldn't say the word bourgeoisie. So they're the ones who started the word bourgeois. So it's spelled Bushwa because it couldn't say the French word bourgeoisie. And then it kind of moved on down the world. And then you have good old Gladys and the Pips. Gladys, who was one of the people who really brought in this term bougie with their song Bougie Bougie in the 80s. And girl, I am going 100% about to put this in the notes. But that song and the lyrics, I was like, yo, Gladys, why you going there? Have you heard the song?
I have not, but I am going to go and look it up after this recording.
The whole song is like talking about how you came from the other side of the tracks and everyone wants to be bougie. Everyone wants to live the fancy life. Everyone wants to be jet setting and all these things. You want to be bougie. And it's a great tune. I won't front. I was like, okay.
Yeah.
Especially watching the YouTube video of them dancing along. Yes. And so that's where it first really came into like the Black culture. It's from Bougie. And then you have, with the Migos, and this is me not knowing everything, the Migos in 2016 with their Bad and Bougie, but they spelled bougie different. So for me, I want to ask you like a couple different things. And I'm like, where do I begin? Like, why do you feel that it's bad? Why people think it's bad to be bougie?
So here's my take on that. I feel that the people that do think it's bad to be bougie are the ones that aren't, that feel intimidated, have some sense of lack or something in themselves that makes their spirit or something feel disrupted by it. It's almost like I guess you can call them like the haters. It's like, I'm not there. I don't think I can get there. So I want to make you feel bad for being there or aspiring to get there or trying to work to get there. It's almost like, to me, you know how in our culture, sometimes you get talked about for leaving the hood. When you get some money, you get some education, you have an opportunity, you leave the hood, you move on up, like the Jeffersons say. The ones that get upset with you and talk stuff about you for leaving the hood, they most likely don't want to stay there either. But they can't leave for whatever reason. So now they want to make you feel bad for what you're doing. I think that's really what it comes from. Because you can move to a safer community. You can put your children in places that give them better opportunities, more opportunities, without turning your back on your culture or thinking you're better than anybody else or feeling like you're on this pedestal that other people aren't. And I think it's that group of people or that mindset of those types of people that make it a bad thing. If you think of different circles, like if you think of the people that hang out with Oprah or CEOs of organizations or businesses, athletes, other professional people, I'm pretty sure the people in their circles aren't calling them bougie.
Yeah.
It's just these other circles over here that do it.
And let's backtrack even further before we get further into this conversation, because I totally agree with you on a lot of things you're saying. Like, what are some characteristics that you heard of people that are quote unquote bougie? Like the negative, like, well, either characteristics, negative or positive. Like, what are characteristics of what have you heard of people being called bougie? Yeah.
I would say high maintenance, intimidating, princess, snobby, think you're better than, things along those lines are things that I've heard associated with people. High standards, hard to please, are all terms that I've heard associated with people that have been called bougie. I've been called a lot of those things too.
And it's funny, like, when did high standards become like, why is it bad to want high standards, or why is it bad to aspire to be, better? Like, one of the things, a couple of things I saw with different lists was like speaking a foreign language. I'm like, okay, if you have foreign language skills, you can probably get a better job. Why is that bad? Going to brunch. Maybe you would go out up late and dang, you missed breakfast. And so it was brunch time. Is that so wrong? Having a dinner party. Maybe you like to be with your friends. Why is that bad? Loving to travel. I'm like, yo, really? Seriously? I was like, people travel to Disneyland. Are they all bougie now? Because, everyone aspires to go to Disneyland. That just might be bougie. Drinking, sodas, art galleries, Whole Foods, knowing what the NSBE stands for and wanting to actually attend the conference. I just find this stuff being BS. Like, even people who get excited about going to Target was deemed as bougie.
Yes.
For me, go ahead. Oh, yeah. So for me, it was just like, why are all these things considered bad? Like, I just didn't get it. Oh, another one was doing an unpaid internship. If I didn't do an unpaid internship, I wouldn't have gotten higher in my career. I worked in politics. That's how you got around. That's how you actually worked your way up. And so why is it bad to want to do things that make you aspire to have better things in life? I don't get it.
I totally agree. Some other ones that I'll add to that list are speaking proper English. Some other, speaking proper English, you're bougie. Having those little small dogs, they're also hypoallergenic dogs. So, and they don't shed. So you can be around
and they're
them
easy
and
to
not
travel
have
with.
a sneeze attack. Yes. And you don't have dog hair all over the place. But you're right. All of those things, drinking certain wines beyond Moscato, having appreciation for those wines, knowing how to eat with the proper place settings and what fork and what spoon are the right ones at the right time of the meal. Drinking sparkling water as opposed to flat water or water out the tap. These are all things that to me have all, when you do them, people for some reason call you bougie, or playing tennis or ice skating or riding horses. It's just like, these are just things that you like to do. Who said anything about making them bougie? Why do they have to be anything? Why can't it just be something that you like to do? We did an episode, my mom, myself, another podcaster, and I, and her daughter, last year, called Redefining Bougie. And it was meant to be the conversation between mothers and daughters and how they were raised and the mindsets that we were taught to have. And one of the things that came up was what you just said: aspiring for excellence, aspiring to have quality things, a standard of quality. Who said anything was wrong with that? Like, when did we get into a mindset of mediocrity is okay? Oh, we're just going to stay at the C-level grade. That's okay. To aspire for excellence, to want straight A's, to graduate with honors, to be A-B students. No. That's being bougie. You're selling out. Why? No other race of people does that to each other.
That's true. That's true. And it's interesting, like, you brought up a whole thing about mothers and daughters. And like, I kind of want to talk about the difference between bourgeoisie in the Black community and bougie. bourgeoisie people are deemed the ones who have homes in, Martha's Vineyards. They're the ones who are the great granddaughters of the founders of Alpha Kappa Alpha, Delta Sigma Theta, and all those other sororities. They're the ones who were in Jack and Jill. They're the ones who used, had a cotillion. I mean, I hella wanted a cotillion. And what's interesting is I wanted the cotillion lifestyle. I was like, because I had friends who were doing that. But my mom was like, "Oh hell no, you're not getting to go to Jack and Jill. You're not, you could do NAACP, but you can't do Jack and Jill. You can't have a cotillion." She didn't want to aspire to the bourgeoisie life. But reality check, we were hella middle class. Like even where we grew up, I had relatives who looked down upon us because we lived in a better neighborhood. And let's keep it real. Where I grew up, shout out to Foster City, California, which is celebrating its 50th anniversary this year. So it shows you it's a new town. When my parents moved there, people were afraid to move there because it's like, oh my God, they're built on marshland. This is going to sink. It's going to be bad. Honey, the value of their house tripled within 6 months. The average price or the lowest price of the house there is valued at least $1 million now. My parents did not pay anywhere near any of that because, again, when they moved there, they were gambling on a new city that most people were like, this is going to crash and burn. And so the prices were dirt cheap. But growing up there, people thought I was better because there weren't that many Black kids there. They're like, oh, you think you're better because you grew up in Foster City. Nah, boo, I didn't choose where I lived. Because if I chose where I lived, I probably would have lived in Hawaii. I would have lived by a beach. I wouldn't have chose to live in a city that used to be marshland that looks like Amsterdam. I wouldn't have chose the city. I would have chose maybe more Black people. So it just gets on my nerves that people say certain things are bougie or they claim that you are when you can't control what you are. But I also think it's interesting when you have my parents' generation, where my parents are both from the South, and they didn't aspire to be bourgeoisie. But they guess they did aspire to be bougie without realizing that they aspired to be bougie. I don't know if your parents had something similar in the idea of redefining being bougie or not versus bourgeoisie.
I would say they absolutely did, but without knowing it. So,
yeah,
my grandmother is my shero. She was, I should say, the epitome of opulence. You never saw her not put together. She always carried herself with style and grace. I remember my mom and I did the Avon breast cancer walk, and I posted on social media about it because she died from breast cancer. And over 15 years after she had passed, people that knew my grandmother were still saying how sophisticated she was, how classy she was. My grandmother had a 12th grade education. She started a business working for doctors as a telephone answering service back when we still had pagers before cell phones. And in Hyde Park, which is where the Obamas live in Chicago, her office was not too far from there. But she set the foundation in a lot of ways for aspiring for excellence and high standards. I don't think she did it with a mindset of anything other than being who she was, being a person that carried herself with class and sophistication and setting a standard for what she wanted her daughter and her granddaughters to see in life. But that spilled over to my cousin, to my mom. Things like when we were little, she never bought us toys. She only bought us clothes. And if they were jeans, they were unique jeans. Like she had these patches put on with like Raggedy Ann and Andy looking things. They were very unique type of outfits. The one toy that I remember my cousin and I have today, it is a porcelain figurine that we could not play with. It stayed in the box. I still have it to this day. She would take us shopping on Michigan Avenue in her heels and still dressed to the nines. Like, she set an example of what your presence looked like. We didn't have a lot of money growing up. So my mom, whatever my grandmother did, she passed on to my mother. So even as a little child, my mom would do certain things. Like, I remember I was about 5 or so. She was taking me to dinner somewhere. And I remember my grandfather saying, "Why are you taking her to dinner at this place? She's too young to appreciate it." And my mom said, and I remember this to this day, "I don't want when she gets older some guy to take her to Sizzler and she thinks he did something for her." And so little things like that of setting the standard and precedence, she was very adamant of exposing me to things that the stereotypical little Black girls didn't do. Like, my mom took me ice skating. She took me skiing. I had tennis lessons, different things to make me more culturally aware. She made me go to museums, even though I hated it, but to expose me to other cultures. So my mom and her brother were the first ones to go to college. My cousin and I went to college and then on to grad school. And each level has elevated themselves. We are in sororities. My mom and I are both Zetas. My dad's an Alpha. My oldest brother's an Alpha. One's a Kappa. So while we didn't do the Jack and Jill and we didn't have that bourgeoisie side of things, I guess you could say we were on the aspiring track, the bougie track, without really realizing it, so to speak. But it was them doing what they could to give us the best life possible, and to expose us to things. My mother had a mindset that she never wanted me to feel out of place or uncomfortable in different circles. No matter who I was around, she always wanted me to feel like I deserved a place at that table. And I think those mindsets helped form who I am today, the way that I think, the way that I'm not okay with mediocrity. I'm not okay with settling. I do want the finer things in life. And it's not just a material thing either. It's not just, oh, I want the Chanel bag. I do. But I also want the higher lifestyle and the recognition of how certain things give you access to things. They help you achieve certain things. They open doors for you. Like you mentioned, Jack and Jill. Our sorority and fraternity organizations were founded, all of these things to give people access, to provide support with like-minded people for us to help each other because we weren't getting help from outside. And I think those things we kind of forget about. We turn our noses up sometimes and we look down at people that achieve them. I want a house in Martha's Vineyard. I want a summer there. What's wrong with that?
No, and I love that, what you're saying, because I do agree. Our parents didn't deem themselves as bougie. And I don't think the Jeffersons can deem themselves as bougie either. But what they did was they knew what their parents or grandparents who were sharecroppers. I mean, because where my father grew up, like, my father didn't have electricity till he was 9. He had an outhouse. He didn't want that for his kids. And so I don't think he was like, I'm going to aspire to be bougie and whatever. He just aspired to do better. And like, for us, like you talked about the talking proper, we weren't allowed to speak slang. So how can I be bougie when my parents were like, I wish you would use certain words? I would say, my brother and I would say, oh, hey, Dad, where's the remote control at? He's like, behind the preposition. If someone would call and say, is Danielle
Girl.
here? My dad would be like, yes, and then hang up the phone because you didn't ask to speak to me. Like, there was just proper etiquette ways that we grew up with. And you talked about Sizzler. These fools, I shouldn't call them fools, my parents, because I was pissed when I found out, they get my brother and I all dressed up and take us to Sizzler to teach us how to eat properly. And when I found out Sizzler wasn't a good restaurant, I was mad upset. I won't lie. I was like, yo, all this time I thought we were doing our thing and we at Sizzler and it's not. But I love that you brought up that whole conversation of, why sororities and fraternities were built, why Jack and Jills were built. because we were not allowed in the circles. We weren't allowed in many places due to segregation, due to Jim Crow. And so we had to build our own to lift our own people up. And lifting our own people up to aspire to, quote unquote, the American dream is now deemed as being bougie once you have, you've gotten to a point to where you can lift another person up. And so for me, one of the questions I have for you is, we have two questions, like, which way do I want to go? I want to go back to the ideal of being rich, being bad. Like, I feel like there's some kind of, I'm not the first person like that's like the Bible person to the full, so I can only speak to some degree. But I feel like we've also been raised to feel that aspiring to be rich is a bad thing. Aspiring to have money is bad because, you're not living a Christian lifestyle. Can you talk to that, or what your thoughts are on that?
I do. I fully agree with you. Before I answer that question, I have to go back to something. When you said behind that preposition at, oh, that is so my mother. As a child, to this day, if I'm not being mindful of how I'm speaking and I just say something, to this day, she still will correct me and say behind that preposition at. But anyway, to go back to your question, my belief is that it is embedded in Christianity. I am a Christian. I believe in God, but I'm becoming more spiritual in defining my own relationship with God for myself and learning things on my own. And part of that comes from the fact that my mom is Pentecostal and my dad is Catholic. So I saw the world of Christianity through different lenses. And to see how they're different, but yet still the same. And at the end of the day, it still ties back to your relationship with God, which is the most important thing for me. And then I became an adult and I went to Baptist churches. I go to Baptist churches. But I think a lot of it is tied to the way and the things that we're taught inside the church. For whatever reason, I think also sometimes when you don't have something, it makes you fear it. Our ancestors oftentimes didn't have a lot of money. The people that had a lot of money owned us. They were evil.
Right.
So it maybe in some ways, does it equate, because we often hear money is the root of all evil. Well, when you hear stories about the things that our ancestors went through from people who had money, maybe it stems a little bit from that. And this is just my own thoughts around it. I have no idea if that's true. But these are just my own anecdotal thoughts. But I think it stems from also us having a lack of understanding of money, understanding what money does, understanding the access it provides. And I feel like COVID was a really great example of that. When COVID first happened, toilet paper was scarce. I remember before I even really realized what was going on. Yes. Before I really realized what was going on, I was at Target and I put toilet paper in my cart. I wasn't stocking up. I was just doing my regular Target run. And I was like, wait, I know I put toilet paper in my cart. Where is it? And I was like, I didn't think anything of it until I later on realized that we were in a toilet paper crisis at the moment. Because like I said, this was in the very beginning stages of COVID. The world had not shut down yet. Mask, which used to be in an abundance before COVID. Hand sanitizer. All these things were in abundance before hand sanitizer. Before they were in abundance before COVID happened. Bandanas. Nobody thought anything about a bandana. COVID happened. You couldn't find toilet paper, mask, hand sanitizer, bandanas, any of those things that we needed, you couldn't find in the stores. You went on Amazon, things that were normally $5, $10, $15, $20, $500, something astronomical. And I remember
Clorox wipes,
Torrey
hell
Roberts.
expensive.
Yes, all of that. I remember Torrey Roberts, Sarah Jakes Roberts' husband, talking about on social media, not that he was proud of it, but he also wasn't ashamed that because of the position that they were in, when his family needed certain items for their safety, they had the means to acquire them, even at prices that were well above what they were worth. But at that period in time, they were worth it for his family's safety. That to me is a really awesome example of the power of money. I believe personally, money is a tool. It's not a living, breathing thing. It's neutral. You can't make it negative, or it's not negative, it's not good. It's just there. The meaning behind it is when it becomes good or bad. If you idolize it, then yeah, it is bad. But if you use it for what it's here for, a tool to give you access to the things that you need, you cannot buy saltines and sardines without some money.
Right.
And that's not like you can't get ramen noodles without some money.
Facts. You can't get Taco Bell without some money.
Exactly. Like anything you need in this world, you need, listen, you need money for water, whether it's a bottled water, whether it's water in your house, you need money to pay for it. So I think somewhere we've just got it. It's looked at as negative because I believe personally we don't understand it. It's not something we're really taught to understand how to use it, how to make it work for us. I think there's some beliefs that are tied into the way that we're taught through churches. Although if you look at a lot of these mega churches, the pastors are not turning down the money. They're not driving around in a Pinto eating ramen noodles and saltine crackers. They live in their
Greenleaf.
Yeah. And I don't knock them for it. It's a job. You're successful. Reap the fruits of your labor. And then I think also there may be something tied into that mindset from slavery where we have been accustomed to lack and scarcity and scrapes and seeing what money allowed to happen to us. So those are kind of some of my thoughts on it.
No, I agree with you. And I do feel that a lot of it, because I think you make a great point, roots back from slavery. I think everything always roots back from slavery, where, money is seen as evil because the people who had money were the evil slave owners or the Black people who also owned slaves. So it's like because they had money, they were able to own slaves and to sell slaves. And so I definitely think it roots back to that. And it's unfortunate because we so don't want, because we're Christians or we believe in God, we so don't want to be seen as evil that we block our abundance.
Yes.
And we don't want to be seen as bougie because it's not Christian to be bougie. So we block our abundance. So we're not allowing ourselves to live to our highest ability because then we're not quote unquote Christian enough. And that sucks. And I hope that there's a way, and I don't know if you have an ideal for us to get past that. I mean, I don't know. Is there a way to get past that thought process?
I think so. I believe, and this is me as the optimist, I believe there's a way to get past anything if you want to. I think a lot of it comes from education. One of the things that I am very passionate about, it's part of why I have my podcast and my business, is oftentimes we are a community of hoarders. We hoard information. Other races share. It's like, hey, I got a stock tip. Let me give it to you. I got this business idea. Let me give it to you. Let me show you how you can get a mortgage without putting money down. Like whatever things they know, they share. For some reason, oftentimes we have this mindset of, ooh, I know this. Mine. You can take it from me. That goes back to our scarcity and lack mindset. So I think it comes from those that know, share. Help other people rise up. Help other people learn. You can't make a horse drink water, but you can lead them there and then give them the opportunity to decide they want to do something different. I think we have to continue to grow and evolve. I also believe a lot of it comes from learning about God and developing your own relationship with Him. Like you talked about abundance. That's what He wants for us. One of the scriptures in the Bible, Jesus says, "In my Father's house are many rooms." That's not a small house. It's got many rooms. If God has this, we are His children. Like any good parent, He wants to give us the things that He has for us. Like the song we used to sing as kids, He has the whole world in the palm of His hands. This big old world fits right here for Him. He's a parent that loves His children. He's not going to keep it from us. And that looks different for different people. Wealth is not necessarily tied to zeros in your bank account, but that is part of it. I don't believe that God's desire is for us to struggle and scrape by and can't figure out how to eat or survive. There's another scripture I probably won't quote it correctly, but it talks about God created the animals and the insects and all these different things. If He cares about these little low-level creatures, how much greater than that do you think He cares for you as His child? And so I just believe that it's so critical for us to develop our own understanding of God for ourselves. He tells us to go before Him with big, bold requests, to have the faith the size of a mustard seed. To me, that kind of speaks to what He wants to do for us, what He wants to give us. And again, it's not necessarily tied just to dollars and cents. That's a part of it, but it's not the whole picture. And so I think through gaining your own relationship with God, your own understanding of what His word, His teachings mean for yourself, learning, seeking information for yourself, no matter who it comes from, there's an abundance of information out here now. Podcasts like this, Google searches, ebooks, like you don't even have to read if you don't want to. You can listen to podcasts and listen to audiobooks and be inundated with more information that you probably ever would want to know. And when you know something, don't hoard it. Share it. Let everyone be able to benefit from it. What's yours is yours. And I'm not also saying give them the secret sauce to your recipe. I'm not advocating that either. But when you learn how to do something better, what something means, when you see someone that's putting someone down and calling them bougie, because we use it negatively in our community. So when you see someone putting them down, say, hey, do you really know what that means, what you're saying? Let me educate you. I think those are some ways that we can start to change things. It's a process. It won't happen overnight.
It definitely is a process. And, I do think it is educating people about what does it really mean. That's why I wanted to have this podcast, why we should all strive to be bougie. I'm not bougie as in Boujee. Nah, I don't want y'all making all this money to where the IRS don't know about it. I don't need you to be, doing it illegal ways. I'm not saying that we're not saying you need to aspire to be the bourgeoisie, because that you'd have to go back and be a legacy, which we're not. I'm aspiring for us to be like the Jeffersons, to say, hey, well, even better than Jeffersons, because let's be real. George wasn't about lifting other people up. He was about lifting himself up. So we want to be like the white man and the woman. I forgot Lenny Kravitz's mother. I forgot her name on the show. But I want us to aspire to help each other. Like, I feel like Harriet Tubman could have been deemed as bougie because she wanted to aspire to lift other people out of their situation. Like, she aspired for
Yes.
people to have better. She was bougie
Mm-hmm.
if we were talking about being someone bougie. And it's not that you want to be these fancy things or flaunting things. There are some people who truly want to flaunt their what they have, their nice clothes and whatever. And those are the people who give the word bougie a bad rap. But there's people who are bougie who like nice things or have take trips because they are enjoying the fruit of their labor. And it ain't nothing wrong. White people enjoy the fruits of labor. What's wrong with that? Asian people do, Latinos do. So I'm really confused why Black people are not allowed to enjoy the fruits of labor. So I don't know, is I have talking to you has helped me embrace being bougie. So thank you. As
You're
I
welcome.
embrace today wearing my vintage dress, which means, i.e., someone else owned this dress, as being quote unquote being bougie, then yes, me buying something that someone else wore and said it didn't want, and I said I want to buy it at a cheaper price, makes me bougie, then yes, I'm bougie, I'm Black, and I'm okay with it. All right. So
Love
at the end of
it.
every episode, I would love for people to just know how to kind of be able to contact you and get in touch with you. I know you have this amazing podcast called Crown Opulence. What else, other ways that we can work with you and kind of become more opulent?
Yes. Thank you so much for that. What you just said is a part of what I do. And the thing that I'm passionate about, or one of the things I should say that I'm passionate about, is helping other people become unapologetically opulent. I created that, or I shouldn't say I created, I changed my view of bougie. And when I embraced it myself, and then I took it a step further and turned it into opulent. And that's something that I'm really passionate about doing. That's why the podcast is named Crowned Opulence and why my coaching and consulting business is named Opulent Outcomes. So ways that you can get in touch with me are, like you mentioned, Danielle, listening to the podcast Crowned Opulence, as well as through my website, CassandraAlexis.com. You can find me on social media at the Cassandra Alexis. You can work with me, which you can also find out more about working with me on those outlets. My business is really about working with Black female entrepreneurs to silence their self-doubt, own their opulence, and market their value so that they can create their own tables and have the opulent outcomes that they desire in their life and business. This is something that I am so passionate about doing. I love working with Black female entrepreneurs, helping them to grow and build their businesses, while also giving them the confidence to believe in their plans, the strategies that come up with, and owning their opulence. And opulence is something that you get to define for yourself. It's something that, while the word means affluent and wealth and grandeur and luxury and all the things that are associated with that, but you decide what wealthy looks like to you. You decide what luxury looks
Mm-hmm.
like to you. I use the example, for some people, it may be flying first class around the world and staying in a five-star resort or hotel. For someone else, a mom with 5 kids, luxury is a bath with quiet time away from her kids and her husband. You get to decide what that looks like and what it feels to you. But at the end of the day, we all deserve to have it, and we have to give ourselves that permission to have it, to embrace it and believe that it's ours.
I'm here for all of that to the fullest. So, yes, yes, yes. We'll make sure to put all your contact information in the show notes. Thank you for
Yes.
reminding us why we need to strive to be bougie. Why being bougie is
Yes.
a goal. I just appreciate you for that. Definitely. So at the end of every show, I
Thank
love to
you.
do some quick fire questions, nothing crazy. So whatever comes to mind, answer the first thing. So you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Okay. So what does living hella well mean to you?
Opulently.
Love that.
Keep
or
going.
window? No, that's fine.
Say that again.
Aisle or window?
I didn't hear you. Window.
Aisle, like on an airplane. Aisle. Okay, your window.
Window.
My next question is, I don't know why I'm skipping on the questions. I'm like, I know these questions. I say these every episode. The next question is, what is always in your travel bag?
Hotel house shoes.
Are you stealing them? Oh, sorry. They're not really stealing. Are you just taking them?
No. They're not stealing. They give them to you to use, so I keep them. They stay in my travel bag. They are not allowed to touch the floor in my house. I will not allow my feet to touch the floor in a hotel room. So they were a part of my stay at the property that I stayed at.
No, I feel you. I do know that they're not stealing. And yes, I am. I love people who know not to put your feet on the ground. And I didn't mean to claim that they were stealing. She is not stealing, y'all.
No, I don't take the robe. I don't take the robe. Just
that's stealing.
Yes.
That is stealing. You take the pillow. And I don't even know why someone would want the robe or take the pillows or take the towel. Like, sorry, I'm going on a whole other tangent because, like, I don't understand why people would take those things. I don't have room in my travel bag
to do that anyway.
I don't either because I'm team carry-on, so I don't get it. So it would never be something I would do. So you can come check my house anyone. I have never stolen a towel. Well, maybe I haven't taken a towel because something was wet and I needed to do something. But I digress. I'm not saying what hotel I did that from. Anyway, when's the first time you knew you were Black?
Ooh, that's a good one. I don't know if I ever knew that I wasn't Black. Like, I don't have aha moment where I was like, ooh, I was Black. I was always around Black people. So I don't think I ever not knew.
I love that. And part of what we're doing is, obviously, with this podcast is creating a wellness revolution to help women of color get out of survival mode and really thrive and heal. What advice would you give to your younger self to be a part of this movement?
Oh, goodness. The advice that I would give to my younger self was to know who she was, embrace who she was, and not change it for anyone.
I love that. Embrace who you are, the opulent queen, aspiring, doing amazing things, helping others, queens raise up to their level and shine. Is beautiful because that's exactly what you're doing. I appreciate you. I honor you. And I'm so grateful to have you on the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for opening up your platform to me and allowing me to share this space with you and talk to your audience. Thank you so much.
You're more than welcome. I love you. I love you for being just who you are and what you're doing. And we need you. We need people like you in the collective helping us strive to be opulent. So that's it this week for the Hella Well with Danielle podcast, y'all. I will see you guys next week. Other than that, ciao. Thanks for joining us this week on the Hella Well with Danielle show. Make sure to visit our website, hellawellwithdanielle.com, where you can subscribe to our show on iTunes, Spotify, and Amazon Music and never miss an episode. Also, you can follow us on social media at HelloWell with Danielle on Facebook and Instagram, and HelloWell Danny on Twitter. And if you like hella love the show and got some good nuggets out of it, know that I'm not too proud to ask for you to please leave a rating or review on iTunes so that we can continue to expand our reach and help other women of color. Again, thanks so much for listening, and I hope to see you next week. Ciao.